She watched me swallow the blue pill, then turned her back and put on my late wife's diamond necklace like it belonged to her. She called my son and laughed, said the house would be theirs by noon tomorrow. She thinks I'm a helpless old man. She thinks I'm too foggy to notice what's missing, too weak to stop what's coming. But she doesn't know I spat the pill into my sleeve. She doesn't know I spent 40 years working with medications, and she doesn't know that tomorrow morning I'm going to be wide awake. If you've ever worried about an aging parent being handled by the wrong hands, or if you've ever been underestimated because you're older, stay with me. What happened next wasn't loud, it wasn't messy, it was careful, and it was final. There is a time of day when a house changes its personality. The light outside fades, but the lamps aren't on yet. Shadows stretch longer than they should. Sounds feel heavier. Even familiar rooms begin to feel unfamiliar. In medicine, we used to call it the violet hour, and for the last 3 months, it's been the most dangerous part of my day. I didn't open my eyes when she came back into the room later that night. That's something you learn when people think you're fading. Stillness makes them careless. When they believe your mind is softening, they stop guarding their own behavior. They move differently, louder in their confidence, quieter in their conscience. The room was dark except for the soft amber glow seeping in from the hallway nightlight. The clock on Margaret's nightstand read 11:18 p.m. The house was quiet in the way it only gets when you've lived somewhere long enough for the walls to recognize you, when even the floorboards settle differently under your weight because they've memorized it. I heard the soft click of the bedroom door. Her shoes came off just inside the threshold. She always did that now, said it helped keep the house clean. But the truth was simpler. Shoes off meant silence, and silence meant privacy. I felt the mattress dip as she leaned closer to the bed. I kept my breathing slow and shallow, convincing, the kind of breathing you learn in hospitals, the kind nurses don't question. Then I heard the sound that tightens something deep inside my chest. The vanity drawer. Margaret's vanity. Wood sliding against wood. Familiar. Intimate. Wrong. That vanity had been in that corner of the room since 1986. I carried it upstairs myself when we bought the house, bumping it twice on the banister because I refused to ask for help. Margaret laughed from the bottom of the stairs and told me I was stubborn. She was right. I always have been. I heard glass being lifted. Her perfume. Margaret wore that scent for 42 years. Lavender and something warmer underneath. She wore it on our wedding day, on anniversaries, on Sunday mornings when she moved through the kitchen humming without realizing it. She wore it the last morning she stood in this room, adjusting her hair in the mirror, while I pretended not to notice my hands shaking as I tied my tie. She sprayed it once, then again. The scent reached me immediately, unmistakable. It cut through the room like a memory with teeth. My jaw tightened, but I didn't move. I let my face stay slack, mouth slightly open, the way she liked to see me when she thought I was drifting. Then came the soft clink of metal. Jewelry. I cracked my eyes just enough to see her reflection in the mirror. She was wearing Margaret's necklace, the gold one with the small clasp that always caught in her hair. The one I'd fastened around her neck on more mornings than I could count. The one I'd held in my palm when I said goodbye in the hospital, my thumb tracing its curve because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. She tilted her head, adjusted the chain, and smiled at herself. And then she whispered, not to me, not to anyone else, just to the woman staring back at her in the glass. I'm the lady of the house now. I didn't move. I didn't react. I didn't make a sound. Because in that moment, something inside me went very still. Not fear, not shock, something colder and clearer. The kind of stillness that comes right before a decision you can't undo. She crossed back to the bed and gently lifted my hand. "Time for your medication," she murmured, soft and practiced, the voice of someone who knows exactly how to sound kind. She placed the pills in my palm, a little more than usual. I noticed that immediately. My fingers felt the weight of them before my eyes even registered the shapes. White, oblong, scored down the middle. 2 instead of 1. I swallowed with a practiced motion. She watched my throat. Satisfied, she tucked the blanket around me the way Margaret used to, careful and deliberate, then left the room. I waited. 10 seconds, 20. I listened for her footsteps to fade down the hall, for the faint creak near the linen closet, for the soft click of her bedroom door closing. Only then did I turn my head, reach beneath the pillow, and spit the pills into a folded tissue I'd prepared earlier. My heart stayed steady. No rush, no panic. Because this wasn't confusion, this was sedation. As I slid the tissue into the bedside drawer, her phone buzzed, still sitting on my nightstand. She had left it there earlier while helping me into bed, distracted by a text she didn't want me to see. I recognized the ringtone immediately. My son. I heard her whisper from the hallway as she answered. "Yes, he took the dose. He'll be confused by morning." A pause. "When do I get my cut, Dave?" If you've ever worried about someone taking advantage of an aging parent, or worried about being dismissed the moment your hair turns gray, stay with me. And if stories like this matter to you, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. My name is Harold Whitman. I'm 73 years old, widowed, and I've lived in this house for nearly 4 decades. Margaret and I bought it when our oldest was still in diapers, back when interest rates were high, but optimism was higher. We scraped and saved, argued over paint colors, learned the quirks of every door and window. We raised our children here, paid off the mortgage early, planted trees in the yard knowing full well we might never sit in their shade. We planned to grow old together inside these walls, talked about repainting the kitchen one last time, about planting something low maintenance in the backyard because our knees weren't what they used to be. Ordinary plans, sacred plans. She's been gone 11 months. Cancer doesn't announce itself politely. It just starts taking things. Energy first, appetite, then independence. By the end, I was brushing her hair in this very room, helping her sit upright at the vanity she loved so much. She used to say it made her feel like herself, even when the rest of her body had started to betray her. After the funeral, the house felt hollow in a way I didn't know a place could feel. Not empty, hollow, like sound moved differently, like even my footsteps hesitated before echoing. I learned quickly that grief isn't loud. It's quiet and constant, like a low hum you only notice when everything else stops. I kept her routines for a while, made coffee for 2, set out 2 mugs before realizing what I'd done. I didn't rush to put things away. Some habits deserve to end slowly. That's when my son suggested help. "Just until Dad gets back on his feet," he said. He stood in the kitchen where Margaret used to lean against the counter and sip her tea. He looked concerned, convincing. I wanted to believe him. He found Carla through a friend of his wife's. Licensed, professional, calm voice. Warm smile that never quite reached her eyes, though I didn't notice that at first. I wasn't looking for danger, I was looking for relief. At first, she felt like a blessing. She cooked simple meals, nothing fancy, soups, stews, things that smelled like care. She drove me to appointments, always opening doors, always calling me dear in a way that sounded respectful if you didn't listen too closely. She organized my medications in neat plastic trays with the days labeled in block letters. She spoke gently, slowly, the way people do when they think age has dulled your understanding. But slowly, things shifted. Mail stopped arriving. At first, I assumed it was the post office. Then bank statements went missing. I asked Carla about them, and she smiled and said she'd already reviewed everything. "Nothing you need to worry about," she said. Doctors stopped calling me and started calling her. I noticed it when I sat in the waiting room and heard my name called, then watched the nurse turn to Carla instead of me. When I tried to speak during appointments, Carla would interrupt smoothly. "He's confused today," she'd say with a sympathetic smile. "Best if I handle it." Keys moved, papers vanished. I'd search for something I knew I'd placed somewhere, only to find it later in a different room. I began to second-guess myself. And that doubt, that quiet fear of slipping, is powerful. I'd always been sharp, organized, reliable. I ran a hospital pharmacy for years. I balanced inventories, caught dosage errors, trained young pharmacists who thought experience was optional. But grief does strange things to memory, and predators know that. Carla suggested stronger medication. "Just to help you rest," she said one afternoon, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. "You've been through so much." She slid the prescription across the table like a favor. She insisted, and I trusted her. Until the patterns became too clean to ignore. Until I noticed the dosages creeping upward without explanation. Until I felt fog where there shouldn't have been fog. Until that night. Because suddenly, every missing document, every intercepted call, every extra pill fell into place, like a picture snapping into focus after months of blur. This wasn't care. This was grooming. What Carla didn't know was this. Before I retired, I spent 20 years as a chief hospital pharmacist. I knew medications the way carpenters know wood grain. I knew how dosages worked, how interactions stacked, how certain drugs slowed cognition just enough to be convincing without being fatal. I knew exactly what she was doing. And once I knew, I stopped being afraid. Once you see a pattern clearly, you can't unsee it. At first, I didn't confront her. That would have been a mistake. People like Carla don't respond to questions the way honest people do. They respond to threat. And the moment they feel threatened, they adjust. They destroy evidence. They rewrite stories. So I did the opposite. I leaned further into the roles she'd assigned me. I forgot names I knew by heart, asked her to repeat things I understood perfectly, let my hands tremble just enough when I held a cup, not too much, just enough to look believable. The thing about pretending to be confused is that people stop hiding things around you. Carla began speaking more freely, on the phone, in the house, sometimes even to me, as if she forgot I was listening. She started narrating my life back to me. "You already ate," she'd say, sliding my plate away even when I hadn't touched it. "You don't remember that conversation," she'd insist, gently but firmly. "You asked me to handle this," became her favorite phrase. Language matters. She wasn't saying I was incapable. She was saying I had chosen to step back. That way, when the paperwork came, it would sound like my idea. She also began isolating me. Friends who used to call stopped reaching me. I'd find missed calls deleted from my phone. When I asked about them, she'd smile sadly and say they hadn't called at all. "Sometimes we imagine things," she said once,
patting my hand.
I let that one sit between us. Let her think it landed. Doctor visits became shorter, conversations tighter. Carla did most of the talking. I noticed how often she used words like decline and safety and best interest. Those words are dangerous in the wrong mouth. One afternoon, while she thought I was napping in the living room, I heard her in the kitchen on the phone. "Yes, the medication's working," she said quietly. "He's slower, more agreeable." A pause. "No, not yet, but soon." She laughed softly. That laugh didn't belong in a caregiver's mouth. That night, after she went to bed, I reviewed the medication labels again. I knew the drug, knew exactly how it would affect cognition at that dosage, knew how easy it would be to explain away the side effects as natural decline. That's when I realized something else. She wasn't acting alone. Carla didn't have access to my financial information by accident. She didn't know my insurance details by chance, and she didn't talk about next steps unless someone was coordinating those steps with her. I needed confirmation, so I waited. A few days later, I mentioned my son casually. "I haven't heard from Dave in a while," I said, staring at the television as if I'd already lost the thread of thought. Carla stiffened just for a second. "Oh, he called yesterday," she said quickly. "You talked for a while. You don't remember?" I nodded slowly, as if accepting that failure. But she was lying. I checked the call log later. Nothing. That was the moment suspicion hardened into certainty. The crack in their armor came from pure incompetence. Carla was lazy. She was so confident in her control that she stopped being careful. 2 weeks ago, she dropped a pill on the rug. She didn't chase it. She just popped another one from the bottle and shoved it in my mouth. At 3 a.m., I dragged myself out of bed. I found it. I brought it to the bathroom light. I pulled out my old jeweler's loop, the one I used to use for inspecting pill markings back when I was still teaching students. Imprint H5. I didn't need Google. I have the pharmacopoeia memorized. Haloperidol, 5 milligrams. An antipsychotic, a heavy sedative. At this dosage, for a man my age, it's not medicine. It's a chemical straitjacket. I looked at that pill, and the fear vanished. The shame vanished. The dementia vanished. I realized I hadn't turned on any stove. Carla did. I hadn't lost my glasses. She hid them. My son wasn't protecting me. He was sedating me to rob me. I decided right then I wasn't taking another milligram. But I couldn't stop cold turkey and let them know. If I suddenly became lucid, they'd panic. They might switch to injections. They might escalate. No, I had to stay senile. I needed a place to hide the evidence. I couldn't flush it. Carla watched the bathroom too closely. So I chose the ficus tree. Every night for 14 days, I wheeled over to it. I dug a small trench in the soil with a spoon I kept hidden in my pillowcase. I buried the poison, one pill at a time. Withdrawal was hard. The first 3 nights, I sweated through my sheets. My hands shook for real. My vision blurred. But by day 4, the world came back into focus. Colors looked sharper. Sounds became clearer. My thoughts stopped moving through molasses. I started listening.
I heard David on the phone in the hallway. "The gambling commission is on my back, Carla. I need the deed signed by Friday or I'm done." I became a spy in my own home. I started documenting. I installed a baby monitor behind the bookshelf in the bedroom. Cheap, unremarkable. the kind of thing no one notices because it doesn't look important. Then I placed a small voice recorder in the dresser drawer. Margaret kept scarves in that drawer once. The fabric muffled nothing. Every word came through clear as day. The old camcorder took more planning. I positioned it where it looked like it had been forgotten years ago, half covered with a lace runner on top of the vanity, plugged in behind the mirror. The red recording light was easy to cover with black electrical tape. Carla never questioned it.
She didn't question much once she thought I was slipping. I recorded her wearing Margaret's jewelry again. This time she didn't whisper. She talked openly. "Your things suit me better," she said to her reflection, laughing. "You had terrible taste." That one hurt more than I expected. I recorded her practicing my signature, slow, careful, saying my name out loud as she traced it on scrap paper she thought she'd thrown away. And then I recorded the calls. My son's voice came through clearly, familiar, casual, almost bored. "Once the evaluator signs off, it's done," he said. "The house, the accounts, everything." Carla laughed. "You should have told me he was this easy," she said. There was a pause. Then my son said something I still hear at night. "He's old. He won't even know what happened." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I sat very still and let the truth settle where denial used to live. I thought about the boy who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during long drives, the teenager who begged me not to embarrass him at school events, the man who stood beside Margaret's grave and cried into my coat like he was a child again. And I understood something painful but necessary. Love doesn't protect you from betrayal. It only makes it quieter. After that, Carla became bolder. She rearranged rooms without asking, gave away things she said I didn't need, canceled subscriptions, closed accounts, all under the umbrella of simplifying. She started calling me sweetheart. That word did something strange to me. Not anger, resolve. One evening, she sat across from me at the kitchen table with a stack of papers. "These are just standard forms," she said. "Medical permissions, emergency planning, nothing you need to worry about." I glanced at the top page. Power of attorney. Not medical, financial. I let my hands shake as I picked it up. "What's this for?" I asked. She smiled patiently, the way you smile at someone you believe can no longer argue. "Just in case," she said. "You trust me, don't you?" Trust is a dangerous word. I nodded. "I trust you," I said softly. That was the night I called Samuel. Samuel Morrison had been my attorney for 26 years. He'd drawn up our wills. He'd handled the estate after Margaret died. He'd sat with me in his office for 2 hours the day I told him I didn't know how to keep living without her. He knew me, and more importantly, he knew when something was wrong. I waited until Carla went to bed, then sat at the kitchen table with Margaret's old notebook, the one she used to keep grocery lists in. I wrote everything down: dates, times, phrases, patterns. Samuel answered on the second ring. "Harold?" he said, surprised. It was nearly midnight. "I need you," I said, quietly. He came the next afternoon under the pretense of checking in on an old friend. Carla hovered, offered coffee, asked questions. Samuel played his role perfectly, warm, unassuming, friendly. After she left the room, he leaned closer. "Show me," he said. I did. He didn't interrupt, didn't react outwardly, just listened, watched, took notes. When I finished, he sat back slowly. "They've already crossed multiple lines," he said, "but the way they're doing it is calculated." "That's what scares me," I said. He nodded. "They think age equals ignorance," he said. "It doesn't. It equals leverage if you know how to use it." We moved carefully. Emergency power of attorney revoked first, quietly, legally. Samuel filed it with the county clerk the next morning. Accounts locked with new authorization protocols. My bank was surprisingly cooperative once Samuel explained the situation and showed them the medication timeline. A new trust drafted, specific, ruthless in its clarity. My son would inherit nothing unless I was deemed competent by an independent medical board and signed willingly in the presence of 3 witnesses. Samuel asked me if I wanted to confront him. I shook my head. "No," I said. "Let him feel safe." Predators make mistakes when they feel safe. Carla noticed the changes almost immediately. She became sharper, shorter, less patient. "Things are more complicated than they used to be," she said one morning. "You wouldn't understand." I smiled faintly. "You're probably right," I said. She relaxed. That's when she scheduled the evaluation. I knew because she said it aloud on the phone, assuming I was asleep. "Yes," she said, "Tuesday. The sooner the better." I spent the days before it thinking about Margaret, about what she'd say if she were here. She always believed in preparation, in quiet strength, in doing things properly. I slept well the night before the evaluation, because fear only exists when you don't have a plan. The evaluation was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Carla told me about it the night before, speaking slowly, carefully, the way people do when they think they're delivering bad news to someone fragile. "A specialist is coming by," she said, smoothing the blanket over my legs. "Just routine, nothing to worry about." I nodded, letting my eyes wander toward the window as if the information had already started to slide away from me. "What kind of specialist?" I asked. She hesitated, just long enough to give herself away. "Memory," she said, finally. "Competency, things like that." Competency. That word sat between us like an object neither of us wanted to touch directly. She adjusted the pillows, then leaned down and kissed my forehead. It was a gesture meant to look caring, but it carried no warmth. It was a seal, a closing of a file. After she left the room, I sat very still and listened to the house breathe. Old houses have a rhythm at night, pipes ticking as they cool, wood shifting, familiar sounds that tell you where you are. That night, every sound felt sharper, as if the house itself knew something was about to be decided inside it. I didn't sleep much, not from fear, from clarity. I reviewed everything in my head the way I used to review medication protocols before a pharmacy inspection, step by step, dosage, timing, documentation. Nothing rushed, nothing missed. By morning, I was ready. Carla woke me early, helped me dress, picked out clothes that made me look smaller, softer. Slacks that pulled slightly at the ankles. A sweater a size too large. "You look comfortable," she said, approvingly. I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror as she wheeled me toward the living room. I recognized the man looking back at me, But I also saw the version she wanted others to see. Slouched, passive, diminished. The evaluator arrived right on time. A man in his early 50s, polite, efficient, clipboard tucked under his arm like a shield. He introduced himself to Carla first. "And you must be Harold," he said, turning to me. I looked up slowly, as if I needed time to process the sound of my name. "Yes," I said, "I'm Harold." He smiled gently, the practiced smile of someone who's done this hundreds of times. Carla hovered nearby, answering questions before I could, filling in details, framing my responses. "He has good days and bad days," she said. "Today's been a little foggy." I nodded, as if agreeing. The evaluator asked me simple questions. Date, location, names of my children. I stumbled when it served me, paused, looked to Carla for help. She was more than happy to provide it. Every time she spoke for me, I saw the evaluator's pen move faster. Halfway through, there was a knock at the door. Carla stiffened. "I'll get it," she said quickly. Samuel stepped inside with a familiar calm, wearing the same navy jacket he'd worn to Margaret's memorial. He looked at me first, not Carla. "Harold," he said warmly. "Hope I'm not interrupting." Carla forced a smile. "Oh, we're in the middle of something," she said. "I know. That's why I'm here." He introduced himself to the evaluator and placed a folder on the coffee table. "Before this continues," he said, "there are some materials that need to be reviewed." Carla's eyes flicked to me, sharp, warning. The evaluator hesitated, then nodded. Professional courtesy outweighs personal discomfort. Samuel opened the folder. The first recording played without video, just audio. Carla's voice came through clearly. "Yes, the medication's working. He's slower, more agreeable." A pause. "No, not yet, but soon." The evaluator leaned forward. Samuel switched to the next file. "This house suits me better," Carla's voice said. She had terrible taste. Carla's face drained of color so quickly it startled even me. Samuel didn't pause. Next came the recording of Carla practicing my signature. Slow, deliberate strokes. My name spoken aloud, over and over, like an incantation. Then the phone calls. My son's voice. "Once the evaluator signs off, it's done. The house, the accounts, everything." Another pause. "He's old," my son said. "He won't even know what happened." The room went very quiet. The evaluator set his clipboard down. Carla began to speak, then stopped. Began again. "This is taken out of context," she said. "He's confused. You can't trust." I stood up. Slowly, perfectly steady. The act fell away like a coat I'd been wearing too long. "I may be old," I said clearly, "but I am not incompetent." My voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It didn't need to. The evaluator stared at me, then at Samuel, then back at Carla. "This evaluation is over," he said finally. Carla's mouth opened, closed. Samuel placed another document on the table. "Emergency power of attorney has already been revoked," he said. "Financial accounts secured. Trust amended. And as of this morning, a formal complaint has been filed with Adult Protective Services." Carla took a step back, as if the room had shifted under her feet. "You can't do this," she said, her voice rising. "You don't understand." I understand perfectly, I said. There was another knock at the door. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside, followed by a woman in plain clothes who introduced herself calmly. Adult Protective Services. They spoke quietly with Samuel, took statements, reviewed recordings. Carla was escorted out without ceremony. She didn't look at me as they led her away. My son arrived later that afternoon. He stood in the doorway, uncertainty written across his face like a language he'd only just learned. "Dad," he said, "what's going on?" I gestured for him to sit. He didn't. Samuel remained nearby, silent. "They told me there was some misunderstanding," my son continued. "That Carla—" "She was working with you," I said. The words didn't accuse, they stated. My son's shoulders sagged. "You don't understand," he said. "I was trying to protect you." "From what?" I asked. He looked away.
From responsibility, from consequences, from the loan sharks who'd been calling him for months about gambling debts he couldn't pay. Samuel slid the final document across the table.
"The trust has been updated," he said. "You are no longer a beneficiary." My son looked down at the paper as if it were written in a foreign language. "You'd take everything away?" he asked. I thought about the bike rides, the late-night talks, the promises. "I didn't take anything away," I said. "I protected what your mother and I built." He started to argue, started to justify, started to explain about the debts, the threats, the pressure. I held up my hand. "You had choices," I said quietly. "You chose the easiest one, and the easiest one required erasing me." He looked at me then, really looked, and I think for the first time in months, he saw who I still was. He left shortly after. The house felt different once he was gone. Not empty, clear. In the days that followed, there were interviews, paperwork, follow-up visits, but none of it felt overwhelming because the hardest part had already passed. I slept better than I had in months. Margaret's jewelry went back into its box. Her perfume stayed sealed. I walked through the house slowly, reclaiming rooms one by one. The kitchen, the living room, the bedroom. Each space felt like it was returning something to me. Samuel closed the legal proceedings within a few weeks. Carla was charged with exploitation and abuse. The case was strong. The recordings were clear. Her attorney recommended a plea. I didn't attend the hearing. I didn't need to see her again to know who she was. Adult Protective Services closed my case with a notation that I was competent, vigilant, and well supported. That phrase made me smile. Competent, vigilant, well supported. Margaret would have liked that. Weeks passed. The house settled again. I reclaimed routines, morning coffee by the window, evening walks through the neighborhood. Small repairs I'd put off while I let myself be managed instead of managing. I replaced the lock on the back door, not because it was necessary, but because it felt symbolic. Margaret's things stayed where they belonged, not because they hurt, but because some things don't need to be used to be honored. One afternoon, I sat at the vanity and opened the bottom drawer. Inside was a folded note I'd forgotten about, Margaret's handwriting, slanted slightly to the right. "If you're reading this, it means I've gone ahead of you. Don't let anyone rush you. You've always known who you are." I sat there for a long time after reading it. My son wrote a letter, eventually. handwritten, careful, apologetic. He didn't excuse himself, didn't ask for forgiveness outright. He asked for time. I appreciated that. Time is something age teaches you the value of. I didn't reply immediately, but I didn't throw it away either. That's the difference between punishment and boundaries. Punishment is loud. Boundaries are quiet and firm. Months later, I met my son for coffee. Public place, neutral ground. He looked older, tired, smaller in a way that had nothing to do with posture. "I didn't think it would go that far," he said. "It always does," I replied. He nodded. That was the closest he came to agreement. We talked for an hour about responsibility, about fear, about how easy it is to mistake convenience for care. I didn't restore what was lost. I didn't need to. Some things don't return to their original shape, but they can exist differently. When we parted, I felt lighter, not healed, but whole. That's when I understood the real lesson of everything that had happened. Growing old doesn't make you weak. It makes you visible. And visibility attracts two kinds of people: those who want to protect you and those who want to use you. The difference is in how they listen when you speak and whether they stop you from speaking at all. I learned that silence isn't surrender, it's preparation, and preparation at any age is power. I still live in the same house, I still drink my coffee in the same chair, but I no longer mistake kindness for compliance, and I no longer assume someone knows better simply because they speak louder. Age didn't steal my strength, it revealed it. If this story resonated with you, if it felt familiar in ways you didn't expect, consider subscribing. These stories are for people who've lived long enough to recognize the truth when they hear it, and they deserve to be told. Tell me in the comments, if you were in my position, would you have given your son a second chance? Or are some betrayals too deep to forgive? I read every comment. Stay sharp, and remember, just because someone underestimates you doesn't mean you have to prove them right.